Magic thing. Okay, and I'm going to throw over to Andre. Over to you, Andre.
Thank you, and welcome everybody to this really exciting, IRM innovation showcase that we're presenting from Enable in context of our first line of defense workspace innovation that we've developed, and also our Bowtie analysis, visualizer and risk analyst, process capability. When we look at the agenda, Vikram, quite a action-packed agenda. We're also focusing specific on a bit of background around ServiceNow IRM, integrated risk management, and its capabilities. And then Vikram will take us through the specific innovation use cases, specifically around the first line of defense use case, and also Bowtie analysis. And then from an introductions perspective, the two mugshots of myself and Vikram. So myself got about 20 years experience in integrated risk management. Also done the largest proportion of ServiceNow IRM implementations within the APJ region. And I'm also being supported by Vikram specifically, who's got 14 years of experience in context of IRM. So really excited about today. Maybe just a quick introduction to Enable for those that do not know Enable. Potentially we're the largest ServiceNow pure play implementation partner. So the only thing that we do within in specific Enable is implement ServiceNow, and we also have the largest IRM practice, and we have a dedicated IRM practice within Enable, and we constantly win also the Partner of the Year awards from Enable. And we work very closely across the different product portfolios within ServiceNow. About our IRM practice, this is first of all our passion. This is also why we develop, these innovations and innovating, use of ServiceNow. So, we implement a lot of IRM solutions across different enterprises, within the market. We also identify what some of those key additional capabilities, that customers typically want. And this is then where we focus internally, and through our Enable Labs division, we then build out additional capabilities on top of the typical IRM solution, features that you have. And this allows us to use the solution in context of specifically, a first line of defense interface and workspace, and also providing additional, risk visualization and risk analysis methodologies like Bowtie analysis specifically. So a quick introduction. When we look at integrated risk management, especially in the times we're currently in, we're seeing that this is quite a demanding task and challenge for organizations. Currently within enterprises, you have a lot of different risk postures, you have a lot of different risk processes at play, different risk methodologies, even within your different units or departments, within large enterprises, medium-sized enterprises, and even smaller organizations. And what we're seeing is that from an implementation perspective, ServiceNow really fits this bill really well in context of providing us the ability to integrate, HR risk specific processes connected into the integrated risk management system, stand up our HR policies, and then being able to continuously monitor, HR risk, and specifically being able to use a common methodology from a risk perspective, and really understanding and starting to level risk across the organization. Some of the other very important, use cases that we see from an implementation perspective is the security or cybersecurity use cases, where we can stand up any of the specific control frameworks in context of an ISO 27000 cybersecurity, perspective, and really develop the risk universe for cybersecurity, implement those controls, and allow the continuous monitoring, specifically. It's an exceptionally powerful capability that we have within ServiceNow. Then from an IT operations management perspective, the ability to really focus on IT operations, understand vulnerability and the associated risk of vulnerabilities within the environment, and then being able to deal with that vulnerabilities in context of risk analysis and risk priorities. Important feature that we have within the solution. We also have a very strong IT service management, risk processing capability, where we can directly and continuously monitor, for specific risk events, specific risk indicators in incident management, problem management, change management across the organization. We also have the ability to implement complaint management systems, claims management systems by using the customer services module within ServiceNow, integrating that with our IRM solution capabilities within ServiceNow, and then also from a finance risk perspective and control perspective, being able to connect and integrate with some of the key financial processes in the organization, and again monitoring those controls directly. So when you look at ServiceNow IRM and you look at an integrated risk capability, this is the solution that fits that enterprise risk requirements really, really well. And maybe just a quick spotlight in context of the different modules within ServiceNow IRM. We have a dedicated policy management module where you can, create your policy libraries, manage the approval lifecycle. You can also manage policy exceptions and policy acknowledgement campaigns. Dedicated compliance module where you can stand up any, context around external regulatory content and obligations, linking that to your internal system of control, managing those control self-assessments really well, managing the fact that you can assign an assessment to somebody. You can also record the evidence and the feedback from that person, the ability to also then stand up a full risk module and process within the organization, including your full risk register, risk taxonomies, including also the ability to manage risk events and build out very, important key risk indicators within the organizations. We also have a dedicated business continuity management module, which integrates with the rest of the IRM module. And here you can build out business impact assessments, you can perform threat analysis, you can build out your IT continuity plans and actually also ultimately test them and provide that assurance. Within the organization, we also have another dedicated module around vendor risk, where it allows us to manage and assign those specific vendor risk tasks and specifically attestation tasks from our vendors and make sure that we can record their feedback in context of their controls and how it will impact us as an organization. We also have an audit and control assurance module where we can assign and perform specific controls, audits, and really, develop quite easy to use scoping mechanisms, and also introduce the use of sampling of controls and testing it. We also have powerful privacy use cases, SOX use case capabilities within the solution. And one of the big benefits of ServiceNow IRM, it's not a point solution. This is a solution that lives within the ServiceNow environment and platform, which gives us direct access to the IT service management environments, ITOM environments, vulnerability response, security operations, HR, and customer service management. So you get the power of a platform with your specific, integrated risk management processes and capabilities from an IRM perspective. Thank you, Vikram. Now, any implementation of GRC or IRM is not just an overnight event. It is a journey that you embark on. And this is also how we structure and, advise the implementation of any IRM, solution and project for our customers. And again, we focus on building out the foundation that's solid and making sure that you have, that policy register capability and policy management processes, your risk registers, issue register, and control registers, and the ability to assign, workflow and manage your tasks and track them over time with the reporting. But this is not where it ends. You can quite effectively over time establish a fully, integrated and digital operating model, supporting capability where you can embed IRM and your risk processes and compliance processes within your business. So you can ultimately scale and build out your capabilities over time by starting small, starting with the basics first, set yourself up for success, and then over time, move through the specific transformation journey within any organization. And with this, I will hand over to Vikram, which will then take us through specifically the innovation use cases. Thank you, Vikram.
Yeah, thanks, Andre. Hello, everyone. This is Vikram. Good morning to the participants. So the first use case that we are going to look at today is the workspace for line one defense users. Just for a little bit of context, the three lines of defense model is a well-known pattern in the GRC world. It basically, means that you have three defensive lines which around which you arrange your governance processes to ensure the right amount of assurance and risk management practices are really embedded into business. So what we have observed is, traditional GRC solutions have focused on the needs of the second and the third lines. The second line, of course, consists of, enterprise risk managers and compliance managers who are involved in the day-to-day of, maintaining risk registers, control registers, managing the relationships between them. And also the third line, which is internal audit, which, provides that additional assurance objective layer. But what we realized from our analysis as well as feedback from our existing customers is that there are a lot of actions and tasks which come out of those compliance actions, which really need to be actioned by users from the first line, who are people in the operative business. So these could be heads of department, senior management, as well as line of business owners and department heads. So, just to give a few examples, say when an audit is performed in a specific department or a business area, there are typically audit findings which are part of the outcome of that audit. So, those audit findings, of course, may be facilitated by the third and second line, but they need to be actually performed by the first line. So those tasks need to be managed, and they will have, obviously requirements from a time perspective as well as budget that needs to get spent on them. One of the key pain points that we heard from in our implementation experience is that the third and second line also spend a lot of time doing follow up over emails or spreadsheets lying in various locations just to track the actions that were assigned. And when they are performing their activities the next time around, it a significant amount of time is taken up in just following up what were the tasks from last time. So to avoid that, what we propose and what we have built is basically a line one workspace, which is focused on the needs of the users who basically are getting actions continuously from the second and third line, but they have their own view of the world and they can action that appropriately. The reason why we have built this is there is increased involvement of line one in risk management. So what we are seeing is, instead of a siloed approach where risk and compliance was managed by a specialized team, more of these tasks and more of the ownership is being transferred to the operative business. Industry bodies are increasingly advocating for a stronger line one. So whether it is actual regulations as well as standards and frameworks, everybody is pushing more for a combination of the GRC compliance activities and combining that with business objectives and KPIs and performance measures, which requires line one users to be really closely involved in all of this. Uh, and obviously, the risk and control ownership is also shifting for more mature organizations towards really operative business and embedding it in that layer. And one key pain point that we observed from the line one user perspective was, because these are non-practitioner users, right? They might not log into the GRC system every day. So things need to be as simple and intuitive as possible to make sure that they are able to action the tasks assigned to them and then provide regular updates. But it really needs to be streamlined and a great user experience for them to adopt the system. So what's included in this additional innovation that we have built out? So basically, there's a dedicated workspace which allows line users to view all data relevant to the entities they are responsible for. And that's the key thing, right? Because there's a lot of confidential and critical data which is part of any GRC system. So we want to make sure that obviously line one is able to access the data that they need, but nothing more than that. So there is a clear ownership established in the GRC system based on which the GRC data access is provided. And what kind of data are we exposing as part of this workspace is reports around risks without mitigating controls, controls without assessments. So the idea is to really provide actionable data rather than just a list of risks or a list of controls. Expiring policy exceptions, for example, when business have applied for exceptions, they've got it and it's about to expire, it's in the next month or so, we provide a list of that. Any issues which have become overdue from a due date perspective are also shown in this workspace, as well as a newly introduced feature from ServiceNow where audit can request evidence to certain documents and standard operating procedures. So those evidence requests are also available as part of the workspace. So just to make it real now, let me show this in the system. So I'm going to just quickly refresh the page and show you and just walk through some of the key features of the first line workspace. So this is a dedicated view and link which is available to all the line one users. And as I said, the data is filtered based on the parts of business that you own. And the idea is to provide a single unified interface uh, to have access to all the GRC data. So you can see here there are risks, there's information about non-compliant controls, audit findings, again filtered to the ones that are specific to my business area. The workspace allows you to create an issue or a risk or a policy exception. So as part of your daily activities, when you realize that you need to create something from a GRC perspective, you have that again in the workspace itself. Then you have some analytics of risks categorized by severity, controls by their compliance status, whether they're compliant or not. The audits that were carried out in my business area, what was the results of that audit, so I can quickly drill down to an audit which had an inadequate result to see what are the findings that I have to work on. And all of these are interactive dashboards, so you can drill down to any of them. So for example, if I want to look at non-compliant controls in my area, I just, with a single click, I'm able to navigate to the list of controls where right now there are gaps. The workspace also has, at the end, a list of the risks and issues which are specifically assigned to me from an action perspective. So I have a clear list of the tasks that I have to, work on from a day-to-day basis, and they are sorted and categorized by for example, the risks are sorted by the residual risk and issues are sorted by the due date. So the idea is to, from going to the dashboard to the part of the system where you need to action things, there are not too many clicks, and to make the user experience really as streamlined and as simple as possible. That's the intent of this feature. Apart from the nice looking dashboards and graphs, you also have the lists view here, which gives you an idea of the work items that are specifically important to you, again categorized very neatly. So you can see here you have access to open issues in your area, risks again in your area, any tasks that have been assigned by the GRC team to you as a business owner, any policy exceptions that you had applied for, as well as controls that are a part of your business. And if I expand all of these, again, they are neatly categorized into various ratings. So for example, if you just want to quickly look at critical issues which are currently open, you can have a view of that, with again, just a single click. And now if you want to look at a little bit more detail of this issue, because I can see that this issue is in the review state, but what's really happening, I have a preview mode here. So I can just click on that eye icon which appears, and I can then look at the details of the issue. For example, who it's assigned to, what the issue type was, the priority, the due date, and if there are some things that I want to change, I can change that as well. So if the issue owner for this has come back to me, which is basically a member of my team, and just has asked for a quick date extension, so I can do that and save the record. So it's not just about providing visibility, but really the ability to take actions on the fly. That's a critical thing with the workspace, and to do it as simply, and in as aesthetic a manner as possible. But there is, of course, a lot of power under the hood. So the system now is showing you issues which are filtered by the category as critical. But if I really wanted to access a more powerful filter, that capability is also available within the advanced view. So I can look at an advanced view, and using logical operators and adding additional criteria, I can make this filter as powerful as I want. So the idea is, of course, to make the workspace as simple as you need, but also to provide you more powerful capabilities as and when you need it. And it's not really, kind of in your face, but available under the hood whenever you need it. So within the workspace, as I said, there are a lot of work lists which are very critical from a business point of view. So you can look at issues from a rating perspective, as well as from a time perspective, issues which are going to become overdue over the next 3, 6, or 12 months, risks without mitigation control. So these are just, kind of orphan risks which have been created, but you don't really have any controls to mitigate them. So you have a clear list of that. Similarly, you can look at controls and see that, there are no assessments that have been performed. So we don't really have a clear idea of how well the controls are operating from an operation perspective. Probably the last thing that I'll just take you through in the workspace is, now imagine that there is an association between an issue and probably a policy or a risk which is linked to it. So what the system also allows us to do is really open the details of these objects within the workspace itself. So for example, I am going to open this critical issue, which allows you to open it in a separate tab within its own view, as you can see. And for example, I navigate to the risk tab and then click on that risk. So the idea is you have access to the details as you need, but you can always go back to the original view from where you navigate. So you don't lose context as you are navigating through the system, because the system is just opening the required data in separate tabs. Good. So that's what I wanted to quickly take you through from a line one workspace perspective. So as I said, the idea is to provide a streamlined view of the information that business owners are responsible for. So they have a clear idea of the tasks that are assigned to them, along with any due dates and along with any conversations that they need to have. So all of that can be driven through the system rather than through spreadsheets or follow-up emails, which I'm sure nobody likes to send. So all of the communication can be streamlined, and all of the statuses can be streamlined using the line one workspace and providing it to the appropriate users. Cool. So that was the first use case that we wanted to, first process capability we want to present. The second capability I'll talk about is the Bowtie risk analysis. So the need for this also came up from various customer conversations we had, where what we realized was that the GRC system is obviously very good once you have identified the risk, because you can take it through the assessment cycle, through to response and to monitoring. But from a risk identification state, there was a gap, because from what typically happens when we discuss this with customers was the identification of the risks is basically done in workshops, where you have a set of people from the GRC team as well as from business, where you discuss and then come up with what are the risks being faced in that area. And one of the tools that was being used by a lot of customers was the Bowtie risk analysis. So, just to set context, I'm just sharing what a Bowtie typically is. So you basically have a risk event at the center of it, and then you basically look at what are sources that are causing that risk, which are basically called sources or costs. And then if that risk actually comes into play, what are the consequences? They are kind of documented like this. And then the team basically works together iteratively on this risk model, and then comes up with controls which are preventative controls, which are control measures which basically allow you to limit the source of the risk so that the risk does not actually happen. But obviously we cannot control it 100%. So if the risk does occur, what are the recovery measures that you have in place? So this is a popular risk assessment kind of model that is used by a lot of clients. The benefits of this is obviously, if you adopt this, it's a repeatable pattern. It can be used across your organization. It is integrated because, you look at risks, controls, and causes and consequences in a holistic fashion. It's causal because you can uh, highlight links between, so it's not just a risk register or a controls register or a consequences register. It basically highlights the relationships between them and the impact of, for example, a cost over a risk, and how that whole relationship plays out. It helps you to identify gap analysis, and I'll just show you this to you actually in the system, how it does that. And obviously, if anything which is visual, when you are in a workshop environment or when you are having discussions with non-practitioners, anything which is visual is much more easily understood and makes the outcome more effective. That's been our experience. So let me now take you to the system to show you how this actually looks. So just for the demo today, what I have done is I have created an analysis already of a risk event around unauthorized user access in a system, right? So this is a pretty common risk from an InfoSec perspective, unauthorized users getting access to your critical, say, customer-facing systems, for example. So as part of this innovation, we have enhanced the GRC risk management core capability in ServiceNow to provide a new option called launching of Bowtie analysis. So I'm going to use that now. So in the risk event, you basically click on the launch Bowtie. And this basically based on your data model in the GRC risk management module is able to visualize and show this information in a Bowtie format. So this is of course something which I've already created, but say in a workshop, you might start with, the risk at the center or the risk event at the center, and then iteratively build things on the top. So what you're seeing is at the center is the risk event, which is unauthorized user access. On the left hand side, you have potential causes of that risk event occurring. So for example, unauthorized user access could happen because your username and passwords are lost due to phishing attempts by hackers. Your system could be hacked by other mechanisms by which the user data can potentially be stolen. And password reset failures could potentially, redirect users to a dummy page where they enter their details and then the details are lost. So you can document multiple causes for that risk event in this fashion, and the system visualizes this in a Bowtie. Similarly, on the right-hand side, you can look at all the consequences once the risk actually happens. So if the user, if there's unauthorized user access and that is detected, there will be obviously system downtime while you are patching and providing the required corrections in the system. There could potentially be a financial loss. So for example, if it's a customer facing system and customers are not able to access it, you'll obviously, there will be a loss of revenue. And obviously there's a reputational loss as well. If credit card details or other personal data of users are lost, there's a reputation loss as well. What the Bowtie also allows is obviously, documentation of control measures. So for example, to prevent the source of phishing, you can put in user verification like a multi-factor authentication control, and also awareness campaigns. Every once in a month you could send out emails to users saying these are the common causes of phishing, and how do you really prevent that. So this kind of visualization, as you can see, right, a complicated risk event of unauthorized user access risk is simplified, and it becomes so easy to discuss in a larger group when you have a visual like this in place. And it also helps you you really identify where your gaps are. So for example, you have identified control measures for the phishing source of risk, but for system hacking you don't have any measures, for example. Similarly, on the consequences side, you have a risk documented for financial loss, but what are your measures for that? So there are no measures for that. So it helps you also incrementally over time, obviously build these measures, but at any point of time, you have a snapshot of what's available versus what's not. Now, where this feature becomes really useful in the context of ServiceNow is the fact that, this is not just a visual in a workshop, but you actually have accountability for each of these underlying data. So now if I click on the risk icon here, the system actually takes me to the risk in the system with a clear accountability of, who is responsible for that, what the risk level is, what the categorization of the risk is, and all the related risks that were there for this. So for example, we had causes and consequences. So all of that causes and consequences are available within ServiceNow to take the next level of action. So for example, now if I see that, phishing is a source or a cause for which I already have two control measures. Now, if I want to see actually who it's assigned to, which business area is responsible for it, I can click on phishing. And this basically shows me that this is what the risk is, what the details are, who is the owner, which is the entity which owns this, as well as the mitigating controls for that risk, any issues that were created, any policy exceptions. So all the benefits of the ServiceNow 360-degree view of things, but now all of that available from within the context of the Bowtie. Similarly, if I want to look at control measures, so for example, if I want to look at system redundancy, which was a control for system downtime consequence, I click on it, and then within the system again, there is a real operative control which is established within ServiceNow. There is an owner, there are regular attestations that are happening for it. So the key benefit of this feature, as I said, is of course a familiar visualization that many people are used to, which is the Bowtie, but really connecting the Bowtie to real operative risks and controls that you can monitor over a period of time. And using the indicator capability, you could actually automate some of that monitoring. So it really allows you to go from the Bowtie to the real view of risk and controls within ServiceNow, again, in just a matter of a couple of clicks. So this will add a huge amount of efficiency, as well as, make workshops around risk identification and assessment much more effective.
Thanks, Vikram. That's brilliant, man.
Yep. So that's all we had to cover for today. If there are any questions or any comments, we can take that.
If anyone's got any questions, feel free to add them to the chat, or maybe turn on your video and ask questions of Andre or Vikram. Should we choose somebody? Okay. Paul, did you want to maybe ask a question of Andre or Vikram? Paul, are you available? No, he's not. Okay, well, we might just leave it there. If there are no questions, no problems whatsoever. In a strange twist of fate, my son's tooth just fell out as we were having this session. So that was a great one to try and manage whilst listening to the session today, but I did manage to keep up with all the details. We will provide this session as a recording to each of the participants who are here today. If you do have any questions, I'll also add in Andre and Vikram's contact details so you can reach out to them. You might have some questions in regards to how it integrates with your current system, or further details that you would like, maybe a one-on-one setup or a conversation with Enable and your organization. So we'll make sure to add those contact details in there. But if there's nothing else for now, we will leave you to it. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Vic. See you. Bye. Just well done, Vikram.
Well done. Amazing.
Yes, like you're such a natural man.